So transforming parabolas, remember, hopefully we remember the equation y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So just to kind of review what each of these does, so A kind of does two things. A tells you if it opens up or down. And hopefully we remember down is if it's negative. And A is also what we call the stretch factor. Which will tell you if it's vertically stretched or compressed. And remember, basically that means like, is it skinny or fat, wide or narrow? These are just the correct math terms, vertically stretched or compressed. So vertically stretched is the same thing as being skinny, and vertically compressed is being wide. It's vertically stretched when the A value is greater than 1, or the absolute value of it. H is going to move it left or right. Remember, left is negative, right is positive. And then K similarly is up or down. So if it's positive, it's up, and if K is negative, it moves it down. So again, this should be review. You did a lot of this in math too, but it may have been kind of at the end of the year on distance learning to where you might not have picked up as much of it as you can. And then also remember the point HK is your vertex, which is the highest or lowest point of the parabola. So for problem 2-3, you're just sketching these parabolas with no graphing calculator, no Desmos or anything. So A is y equals x minus 7 squared minus 2. And B is y equals 0.5 times x plus 3 squared plus 1. So these can just be sketches. You don't have to make a complete accurate parabola. But take a minute or so, or 30 seconds or so, and try to identify A, H, and K and plot the vertex if you can. I'll go over it, but see if you can do it in maybe 30 seconds. Okay, so hopefully you were able to identify on this first one, A is 1, H is 7, and K is -2. So H is positive 7, even though it has a -7 in here, because the equation is x minus H. So this tells us a couple of things. A being 1 tells us it opens up. because it's positive. And then HK together give us our vertex, which is the point 7, -2. I'm going to count by twos here. So there's going to be my vertex, and it opens up. And again, it's just a sketch. It should look a little bit more symmetric than mine does. Sorry. Kind of like that. Not perfect, but that's okay. And then on B, A is 0.5, H is -3, and K is 1. So -3, 1 is my vertex, and I'm going to count by ones on this one because I have enough space. I'll just write it down here. So my vertex is -3, 1. A is 0.5, so it still opens up because it's positive, but it's also going to be wider because A is less than 1. It's between -1 and 1. So my stretch factor equals 0.5, which means it is wide or vertically compressed. And again, if you guys have questions, please stop me when we're in the middle or type them in the chat. All right. Okay, so we're gonna review this one of two ways. The other way you did learn last year with completing the square, and some of you may remember how to do that. We reviewed solving by completing the square, but on this problem, A is not going to be 1. So it is going to be a little bit different. So we have the equation y equals 2x squared plus 4x minus 30. So this is in standard form. And again, our goal is to get it in graphing form, also known as vertex form. So we should know a little bit about this graph. We know that it opens up. So standard form kind of tells us two things. This A is the same as that A. So we know right away that it opens up and it's narrow because A is equal to 2. And then we also know the other thing that standard form tells us is the y-intercept. The C value is our y-intercept. But again, that's not enough to graph this parabola, which is why we want it in graphing form. So we need to find the x-intercepts. We're going to find the x-intercepts to help us get it into graphing form. So for x-intercepts, we set y equal to 0. So over here, I'm just going to kind of sketch what we know so far. And the only thing we can put on our graph right now is we know that y-intercept. That's all we know. Again, we know it opens up, but we don't know what direction or what side of the y-axis it's on. So we're going to find the x-intercept. So to do this, you can either factor, you can, again, if you know how to complete the square when a is not 1, you can do that. We'll review it, I think, next Monday. So don't stress about that if you don't remember it, or you can do quadratic formula. I'm going to factor this, but if you want to go ahead and do quadratic formula, you can. But remember here, I can divide everything by 2 first on both sides to make this x squared plus 2x minus 15. Because it was equal to 0, I just divided both sides by 2. 0 divided by 2 is stayed 0. So you'd set up your box and diamond somewhat like that. X squared and negative 15 inside of my box, and then negative 15 on top of my diamond and 2 on bottom. If you don't divide by the 2 first, you'll get the same answer. You'll just have larger numbers in here. So our 2 numbers that multiply to negative 15 and have a sum of 2. So we have 5x and negative 3x. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. 5 minus 3 or plus negative 3 is 2. So in factored form, we have 0 equals x plus 5 times x minus 3. So we get x plus 5 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. So if we subtract 5, we get x equals negative 5, and here we get x equals 3. I'm going to scale my x-axis just by 1s since I have enough space. Okay, so now we know our 2 x-intercepts, negative 5 and 3. Hopefully we remember with parabolas that they have what's called a line of symmetry, which means we can fold our parabola in half and it would match up on both sides. So with that being said, that line of symmetry would have to be in the very middle here. So halfway between negative 5 and 3 is going to be at negative 1. So I'll write that in words too. So the line of symmetry is in the middle of the x-intercepts. So basically what you do to find the middle is you average them. And sometimes you can just look at a graph, but if you do -5 plus 3 divided by 2, -2 over 2 is -1. So that's that line of symmetry at x equals -1. And then the other important thing is the vertex is on the line of symmetry. So we know the vertex is -1 something. We don't know that something yet. We know it's somewhere on this line. And because our parabola opens up, we know it has to be somewhere below -30 because the vertex in this case has to be the lowest point. So again, the vertex is on the line of symmetry. So it has an x coordinate of -1. So we take -1 and we plug it into our equation. So if x equals -1, y equals 2 times -1 squared plus 4 times -1 minus 30.
Mr. Rice, could you scale it down? Oh, thank you.
So again, I took -1 and I plugged it into the original equation, the y equals equation. That's going to give us the y coordinate of the vertex. So -1 squared is +1 times 2. We get 2 minus 4 minus 30, which is -32. That's where that -32 comes from, and this -1 comes from there. So now you can go back and add that to your graph. So again, I scaled, so it's going to be about right here. You could plot another point here. Remember, this line of symmetry means if I fold it, it lands right there on the other side. But this gives us an idea of what it looks like. I'm going to scroll up for a second so you can see my parabola. So notice I said that it should be narrow. Mine doesn't look very narrow because I didn't scale the axes the same. If we had scaled this by ones also, it would look much skinnier. So the way you scale your axes can be deceiving if it's narrow or wide or just your standard parabola. But again, standard form doesn't give us enough information to just graph it. So what we had to do, we can find the y-intercept, which again isn't very helpful. We could have almost made this same graph without it. We had to find the x-intercepts by setting it equal to 0. I chose to factor, but you could also use the quadratic formula. I know some of you prefer that. Once you find your x-intercepts, you average them because that's going to give you your line of symmetry. Your vertex has to be on that line of symmetry, so whatever that average was, you plug in for x and solve for y. So you are going to try one on number 5. 5 has 4 parts. We're just going to do, you guys are going to do part A only. So it's p of x equals x squared minus 10x plus 16. So you're going to, oh, sorry, I got to go back a little bit. I forgot, I didn't actually write the graphing form equation on this problem. Sorry, I just ended up graphing it. So our graphing form equation, since this is my vertex, this is h and k. We already knew our a value was 2 way back at the beginning. So my equation is 2 parentheses x plus 1 squared. Remember, it's a plus 1 because this is x minus h. H is -1, so when we subtract that -1, it becomes a plus. And then minus 32. Again, A was already given to us. We didn't have to do any thinking. And then this is our HK value. So you're gonna try number 5 right now, doing something similar. You're going to find the x-intercept, so make P of x 0. Solve for the x-intercepts, average them to find the line of symmetry, and then use that to find your vertex. Sorry, so to repeat myself, we had 4, 3 for our vertex here, our HK. I plugged it in, and now we have to solve for A. To solve for A, you use one of the other 2 points you know. So we can either use this point, which is 0, 0, or we could use this point where it lands. We know it has to land at 8, 0 because it's a parabola. It doesn't matter, you're gonna get the same answer either way. So I'm gonna plug in 0, 0 for my x and my y. So plug in 0, 0. Again, that's x and y. So 0 equals a times 0 minus 4 squared plus 3. We're solving for a here. So following our order of operations, 0 minus 4 is -4 squared plus 3. -4 squared is 16. So this is 0 equals 16a plus 3. Again, negative squared becomes a positive. We're trying to solve for a, and this looks like a regular Math 1 equation now. We would just subtract 3 on both sides. -3 equals 16a. And some people might just subtract 3 at the beginning, it doesn't matter. And divide by 16, and we get that a equals -3 over 16. Which, looking at the graph, you should have already known that a was negative because it's opening downwards. If we solved and got a positive, we would have known we made a mistake somewhere. Also, had we plugged in 8, 0, this would have been an 8 instead of a 0. An 8 minus 4 would still be 4, and when we square it, we'd get 16. So again, it doesn't matter which x-intercept you use. I like to use 0, 0 because then I don't have to worry about what one's x and what one's y. So our equation on this problem is -3 over 16 x minus 4 squared plus 3. And now our last one for today is problem number 15. And it's the same kind of idea where we're going to have to practice solving for A. It says when Miss Bibby kicked a soccer ball, it traveled a horizontal distance of 150 feet and reached a height of 100 feet as its highest point. Sketch the path of the soccer ball and write an equation for the parabola that models it. And then part B is how far horizontally is the ball from Miss Bibby when it's 25 feet high. So again, I'm just gonna write down kind of what I know so that when we go back to the books or my paper, our horizontal distance is 150 feet and it reached a maximum height of 100 feet. So horizontal distance 150 and then the height was 100 feet. So I'm just going to count by 20s, 40, 60, 80, 1. So 100 feet was the maximum. I'm going to count by 25s on the x-axis. What, baby? Okay, so horizontal distance of 150 feet. So if it starts here at 0, 0, that means it lands here at 150. We know that the maximum height is 100, but do we know where it's at the maximum height? Based on kind of what we did on problem number 4 and 5, can anybody tell us where that maximum height will be? We know it has a maximum height of 100, but where is it? So you type it in the chat or say it out loud. Maybe we want to flip back to what we did on number 4. Again, these are our two x-intercepts. So how do we find where the vertex is? Yeah, so we average them, and someone already said what we do. So the average of 0 and 150 or halfway is going to be at 75. So our vertex here is at 75, 100. Again, the book told us the height was 100. We just had to average them. Go ahead, Dave. So now we're gonna just do that same process. Y equals A times X minus 75 squared plus 100. Again, this is my H and this is my K. So you pick one of these 2 points, 0, 0 or 150, 0, and plug it in for X and Y. So 0 equals A times 0 minus 75 squared plus 100. Try to solve for A. I'm going to give you guys maybe about a minute or two. If you figure it out, don't type it in the chat right away. Let some people have time if they need a little bit more time, please. Okay, so hopefully you got A equals negative 100 over 5,625. And God bless you. You are welcome to turn that into a decimal. Typically speaking, it's going to be a fraction. So just make sure you're okay with both ways. So to simplify this, if you don't remember, you can, most of you might be able to see, oh, 5 goes into both of these and just start simplifying. So yes, it can be simplified. Your calculator will do it for you though. So again, on the graphing calculator, if you hit math and then hit fraction, it tells you it's negative 4 over 225. If you turn it into a decimal as negative 0.0178, that's fine too. It's more about the process of solving for a that I'm concerned about. So your equation here would be y equals negative 4 over 225 x minus 75 squared plus 100. Remember, your final answer has x and y in it. If you want to use the decimal instead of the fraction, again, I'm fine with that. If it's multiple choice, make sure you can identify, they wouldn't both be there.